Mais c'est intéressant de voir les étapes. Donc apparemment on aurait déjà trouvé une fin. La fin troublante.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Oh, donc ici le but serait de plutôt faire l'inverse de ce que j'ai fait précédemment. Donc du coup on va faire l'inverse de ce que j'ai fait précédemment.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Bah du coup on va aller à gauche parce que je suis allée à droite. Ici j'avais décidé de pas l'écouter. Je vois comme il ferme bien la porte derrière moi pour dire voilà, maintenant t'as fait ton choix, tu peux plus revenir en arrière.
Yet there was not a single person here either.
Et on peut se mettre
Feeling a
accroupi.
wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there. Stanley stepped into the broom closet, but there was nothing here, so he turned around and got back on track.
Non, je reste là, je suis bien là.
There was nothing here. No choice to make, no path to follow, just an empty broom closet. No reason to still be here. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Alors ici on écoute ou on n'écoute pas? On monte ou on descend? Bon, du coup, on ne l'écoute pas. On descend. Wow, la lumière rouge.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss. Admitting he had left his post during work hours, he might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all? None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down? Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. I'm dreaming, he yelled. This is all a dream. Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground. Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too appeared. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head
En vrai, j'attendais qu'il se taise, mais comme il a pas l'air de trop se taire, et Ito, en fait, j'ai pas trop envie non plus de l'écouter, tu sais. Des fois, c'est amusant, tu dis, et si je fais ça, ça fait quoi?
I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought. And while he thought it all very odd, and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself? Believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too, surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of the world outside this one.
Rip pour ta
Wake
souris.
up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment, and my wife, and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay. Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black. This is the story of a woman named Mariella.
Oh?
Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy, this much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day, the very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
Moi, c'est sûr que cette Mariella... Non-assistance à personne en danger, madame. Bon, du coup, me revoilà ici. Je suis Mariella, du coup?
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Oh.
Oh, new content? What does that mean, new content?
Bah, en vrai, si ça vous intéresse, moi, je veux bien faire plusieurs lives pour qu'on essaye de découvrir toutes les fins ou presque. On peut, moi, si ça vous intéresse, moi, je veux bien. C'est avec plaisir que je le fais. Je vais où, là?
Hello, and thank you for playing the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe.
Oh,
As you may know, the Stanley Parable was a video game released in 2013 on home computers. After receiving critical and commercial success, it was expanded upon in 2022 with the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, a reimagining of the game for consoles and home computers. The Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe features exciting new content that broadens and expands the world of the Stanley Parable, delighting audiences the world over. Please, step inside and see what thrilling new adventures await in the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe.
Oh, well, this sounds delightful. I'm very excited to see the thrilling new Ultra Deluxe content.
bon bah on va y aller.
Okay, so far it's an elevator. Nothing special yet, but I'm sure it's just the beginning of a mesmerizing adventure.
Ouais, mais encore, je peux monter, je peux descendre.
Is it broken? What's going on here? Should we be moving somewhere? Or, oh,
Ah,
there
c'est
we
bon.
go. All right, finally, at long last, it's on to the new content. I've never been more ready. Let's do it. I have to say, initial impressions of Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, mostly tedious. It's as if them... Oh, okay. Let's see the content. Give me the content, Stanley.
J'allais juste demander, tu peux pas mettre une musique d'ascenseur, tu sais, pour faire passer le temps? Ça aurait pu être drôle en vrai.
All right, let's see. It's the jump circle.
Appuyez sur A pour sauter. D'accord, je vais devoir sauter 30 fois.
A few moments later.
J'essayais de voir si jamais ça allait dans le négatif, si je sautais encore. J'ai eu des succès. Et puis, du coup, c'est fini? Bon, je suppose que je dois aller là maintenant.
Is that it? Surely that's not all the new content. There has to be something else, right?
Ah, on continue du coup?
Goodness, another elevator. Stanley, I have to say, initial impressions of this game are not positive. It's just elevators and jumping. Is this what passes for exciting new content? If this is new content, then I could just read you the whole dictionary. There's 20 hours of new content right there. Hell, I could count to 30 trillion. You could put that on the box. The Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, now with over 1,000 hours of new content. And if... Oh, wait. There's more. Very good. Yes. I knew there had to be something else. Let's see it. I'm ready for whatever it is.
Merci.
That's it? Oh, you've got to be kidding me. You see, Stanley? This is what happens when greedy video game developers with no respect for their fan base rush a cheap expansion to market for no reason other than to make an easy dollar. And don't get me started on the level of craftsmanship that's gone into it. In fact, I'm looking right now at the game's achievements, and it's hard to believe one of them actually says, "Test achievement, please ignore." What quality assurance department signed off on this? I'm infuriated and I'm offended, and I intend to find these people on Twitter and hold them personally accountable. It's my fault, Stanley. I built up too much anticipation around the new content, I'm afraid. It could never have lived up to such expectations. If you're still with me, why don't we just reset the game, and we'll try to get back to what the Stanley Parable is really about. No frills, no gimmicks. Just you and me having a great time together like always. What do you say, friend?
Je suppose que c'est le nom du succès que j'ai eu, Aito. Test à ignorer. Bah pour toi, en vrai, j'ai pas vraiment ignoré le test. C'est juste qu'en fait, comme dit, il y avait 30 sauts à faire. Et en fait, je voulais voir si je continuais à faire les sauts, si ça allait tomber dans le négatif, tu vois. -1, -2, -3, et ainsi de suite. Bon, du coup, c'était là que j'étais censée aller.
Psst! Stanley! Come over here! In the vent! I want to show you something!
Du coup, on y va ou on continue à monter les escaliers? Allez, on y va alors. Tout le monde semble d'accord dans le chat. Mais je veux pas tomber là-dedans, moi.
Okay, you remember how cheap and unsatisfying the new Ultra Deluxe content turned out to be? Well, it got me thinking about the past, and how much better the Stanley Parable used to be. So I made something special and tucked it away here where the game's developers won't find it. Just our little secret. Take a look.
Oh! On change de jeu? Waouh! C'est joli.
I call it the Memory Zone. It's where I've been storing all my favorite memories so I can relive the peak experiences of my life whenever I want. Experiences like the launch of the Stanley Parable on PC.
C'est joli.
You see, Stanley, doesn't the Memory Zone remind you of how wonderful Stanley Parable was before it was sullied with a cheap re-release? Remember back in October of 2013, when the game originally launched? Back then, video games had integrity. Back then, it all meant something. Oh, the waste.
Ah, c'est moi. C'est moi avec... j'ai oublié son nom. Comment elle s'appelait? Margaret? Je sais plus. Ah, Mariella, voilà, merci.
And over here is where I keep reviews of the Stanley Parable. Like this stunning triumph of games journalism, 10 out of 10 from Destructoid.com. James Stephanie Sterling writes, and I quote, "Where so many games that aspire to be more than games end up less than any form of art, Stanley Parable strives and then succeeds to be every game ever created." Did you hear that, Stanley? Every game ever created. That's how grand and all-encompassing the original Stanley Parable was. It was literally every game ever created. It was Skyrim, it was Persona 3, it was all of them, and now it's nothing. It's no games at all. It isn't even the Stanley Parable anymore. It's just a husk now. A lifeless husk with an hour of new elevator content.
En haut ou en bas? On va en haut ou en bas? C'est fermé en bas? Bah tu sais quoi, même rien que parce que même tu as dit que c'était fermé en bas, je veux tester. Je suis comme ça, moi. Hey, c'est Stanley et c'est Mariella du coup. Je ne vois pas du tout ce que tu veux dire, Iron. Pas du tout.
Here's another moving passage, this time from GameSpot.com. The Stanley Parable is both a richly stimulating commentary on the nature of choice in games and one that offers some of the most enjoyable, surprising, and rewarding choices I've ever been confronted with in a game. 9 out of 10. Don't you get it, Stanley? The game was perfect. It didn't need anything else. It didn't need new content. It just needed to be left alone, to spend the rest of time collecting dust in the hallowed hall of beloved video game memories.
Ah ah, ah, c'est drôle d'avoir ouvert une porte où je peux pas passer. Comment je passe?
Oh, these were simpler times, Stanley. What I wouldn't give to go back, to have it all over again.
Bah, du coup, ça me perturbe qu'ils aient laissé cette porte-là ouverte. J'ai l'impression que je peux y aller. Bon, alors du coup, Aito, est-ce que je peux réellement aller voir cette porte-là ou est-ce que c'est juste décoratif? D'accord, donc je vais juste faire demi-tour alors. Du coup, je peux aller en bas maintenant. Ah oui! Je disais ça pour rire, mais apparemment
Hang
non.
on. I don't recall this part of the memory zone before. What's this? What's down here?
Oh. Mais là, je suis pas dans la serious room, je suis dans la pièce des souvenirs, normalement, si j'ai bien compris.
Oh no.
Si j'ai bien
God,
compris.
no. Stanley, it's a collection of reviews from Steam, the online video game distributor. I haven't looked at these in years. I can't even imagine what's been collecting down here. Surely these reviews were glowing as well, weren't they? Honestly, I could not be bothered to play this game to full completion. The narrator is obnoxious and unfunny, with his humor and dialogue proving to be more irritating than entertaining. Unfunny! I'm not trying to be funny. I'm trying to make a serious work of art. I suppose I could write up a handful of gags to insert into the Stanley Parable, but the game is already such a densely layered web of profound philosophical insights that I can't even imagine where I'd have the room to stick them.
Ah, c'est vrai que tu parles déjà tellement beaucoup que... Déjà, moi, j'arrive pas à en placer une quand je veux parler.
Okay, let's see what this one says. While the idea for the game is good, for someone who prefers non-linear games, this preachiness gets annoying fast. Preachy? Stanley? I'm not preachy, am I? You can tell me if I'm preachy. Honestly, you can. Oh, goodness. This is actually quite shocking for me. Well, to be honest, I had always thought of the game's dialogue as being rather terse to begin with. You can't know how much fluff I cut from the game to get it to feel as light and airy as it... Well, I always thought it did, but maybe it wasn't. Dear, what an awful memory to have to hold on to. These black marks are my otherwise unimpeachable track record. I feel like a failure. Like I let these people down. Perhaps the Stanley Parable isn't quite as sterling as I always remembered.
Du coup, je me demande, est-ce que cette partie-là, elle était déjà dans le jeu de base ou pas du tout? Ou ça, c'est vraiment le nouveau contenu?
What's this one got to say? You constantly have to stop doing anything so the narrator can catch up with his long-winded explanations of what's happening. I wish there was a skip button. A skip button? Well, yes. Yes, I think we can do that. If I'm truly too preachy, then maybe letting you skip ahead for just a moment, surely it couldn't hurt. Not if it means we can strike these negative reviews from the record. Only positive reviews of the Stanley Parable. That's my motto today, and it's always been my motto. I'd do anything for the customer, Stanley. Yes, a skip button we shall have.
Elle est où le bouton passer alors? Ah bah le voilà. Suffisait de
And
demander.
here it is. Go ahead and give it a shot. Oh, you're back, you see. You were only frozen in time for a few minutes, but it was plenty of time for me to deliver a long, rambling monologue full of...
Je pensais pas que ça remarcherait.
Well, you really did catch me rambling on a bit, didn't you? But that's the power of the button. The minute I start to go off on a thoughtless display of self-absorption, it's right at your fingertips to go pop. Okay, welcome back, Stanley. Now, I should say that the amount of time the button has been skipping through is becoming longer and longer. That last one was, well, I want to say maybe 30, 45... Stanley, please don't push the button again. It's been 12 hours. You've just been frozen there. I don't know why the skips are getting longer, but they're really, truly getting longer, and my God, there's no way out of the room.
Du coup, j'ai envie d'appuyer encore une
Stanley,
fois.
the door is gone. Oh, Stanley, you're back. You're back. Oh, my goodness. I have someone to talk to again. Stanley, I think it's been a week. Or 2 weeks. I've been sitting here all that time. Just sitting here. Not a single person to speak with. And you'd think that that's just how it's always been, right? Me talking and you saying nothing. Would you think that it's exactly the same as always? Doesn't that feel like what we've already been doing? Me just talking? But it isn't, Stanley. It isn't the same at all. It isn't even close. Because I know you can't hear me once you push that button. That's what I'm realizing now, Stanley. I'm realizing that I needed to know that someone was listening. I needed there to be a...
Non.
Oh, hello. It's you. You're here again. Welcome. I have had time to think about you and about us and about everything we've been through. I've had so much time.
La plante, elle est
I
morte.
stopped keeping track after a year. Have you ever sat down in one place and not moved for one entire year? Let me describe it for you. To begin with, there is only regret. There is only the turning wheel of missed opportunities. I felt nothing at all but regret for the longest time, Stanley. Days, months. I lost it all in a blur of the deepest longing to undo the past. And when that feeling had begun to subside, what took its place is what I can only describe as the collapse of every moment I have ever experienced
Ça va, tu parles plus? T'en as marre? Qu'est-ce qui se passe? Pourquoi ça fait bip bip?
But they didn't understand the game was never meant to be funny. It was meant to have a point. It was meant to speak to the human condition. But where are the jokes? Where are the jokes? They bemoaned, they screamed, they gnashed their teeth and said, entertain us. It wasn't enough. They had to leave a pathetic little thumbs-down review and make all of their pitiful demands. But then, he's talking too much, they said. First, he didn't entertain us, now... The end is never the end, 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 is never the end.
Oui, ça va, on a compris. Il est devenu fou, j'ai rendu fou le narrateur. Bah, c'est justement ce que j'étais en train de dire. Wow. Et du coup, si tu le laisses parler pendant tout ce temps-là, il se passe quoi? Enfin, faudra voir ça. Faudra encore que j'arrive à retomber dessus. Encore? Mais c'est joli. Mais c'est joli. Enfin, un peu de verdure. Encore? Encore. Oh! Oh, même le bouton, il est tombé. Oh, du coup, est-ce que le bouton, il est cassé ou pas? Il a l'air. Et la pièce est plus très droite. Waouh! Oui, je vois ça, c'est la fin du monde. J'ai provoqué la fin du monde. Bah écoute, je suis pas née pour écouter le narrateur, je suis née pour foutre la merde. Voilà, j'y peux rien. C'est pas ma faute. Ouais, No Man's Sky. Exactement. Ah,